Hello everyone. Welcome to Gnostic Alchemy. My name is Genevieve Akal. I'm a Gnostic priestess and nun. And today I want to talk about the devil. Which is why, of course, I wore red for the occasion, because I'm compelled to costume for things. I do understand that this subject matter can be quite triggering and sensitive for some people. I grew up in fundamental Christianity, so I understand that. And I hope you feel safe enough to hear a different perspective and ask the Holy Spirit to reveal to you what feels right, and good for you. But I do want to say to all my Abrahamics out there, it is safe to be here and listen to other perspectives. You're allowed to do that. Okay. So let's begin with the idea of Satan or the devil. I've done a sermon before called Dissolve the Abrahamic Separation Deception. So in Abrahamic understanding, there is this inbuilt concept in the religion that God is an off-planet creator God. God is outside of the self. God is over there, right? And in this previous sermon, I discussed the problem of an externalized God. If God is separate from the self, then what am I? Right? And there's this inbuilt sort of neuroses and tension in that idea, because one is always trying to pull God closer, pull God in. And I'm not feeling good, I'm not good enough, maybe it's my behavior, maybe I need to do this, maybe I need to do that. I have to do something to get God to come closer to me, right? But as we all know, the teachings of Yeshua is that the kingdom of heaven is within. We are all an expression of God. God is in me, in my heart, right here, in my body, in the cells of my body. And I can access and tune in and revel right from here. The fountain comes out of me and my heart, and out of you and your heart. There's nothing off planet far away from you. That's a false understanding. And it leads to a lot of isolation and loneliness. It's much better, right, to walk around in life and know that God is gushing forth from within, right? So, just as much as God is within, so too is Satan. Good and evil are yin and yang, light and dark, order and chaos, masculine, feminine, right? Darkness is a potential from within. There's no Satan that is outside of me, right? This was a later development in Christianity that has obviously found its way into Islam, that the devil is an entity, a being, a character, a dark, bestial, malevolent figure that exists outside of the person. Him and his demons, right? That isn't true. Before that understanding came in, much later, what was very broadly understood was that there is one God we cannot define, right? The Indians will say Brahma. The Kemetic peoples or Egyptian people say the origin, the creator, the origin is Atum. Okay. So, ineffable, this great mystery. And these very sophisticated cultures started to understand that there were archetypes to the human experience. There were many faces of God. God is so big and inexpressible, but how does it play out in our lives? Right? So the Egyptians called the god of chaos, darkness. That archetype they called Seth or Set. The Indians call her the goddess Kali, right? And before our current conception of Satan, the Solomonic peoples called that aspect Satan. Not as in, hey, that's an outside devil. In their minds and their deep understanding, which goes for many millennia before our current understanding of Satan, it's much older. They understood Satan to be the Satan of Job, right? Where you have the story of God or the Creator and Satan working together, light and dark, right? In the story of Job. Satan represented what we all experience in our lives, which is when we are in darkness of our own issues, our lives, or Satan, it's not a figure doing this, it's just the nature of reality, how God has designed this realm. We will experience antagonism, right? When I'm blind to something in myself, I'm not seeing a problem in my own being, in my own psyche. The world starts to challenge me, right? People will come into my life that rub up against that wound, situations. We've all experienced that when we get pushed into something where we have to face our problem, right? And it feels uncomfortable, and it feels like, okay, there's some kind of devil pushing my face into my problems, you know? It's uncomfortable, it's chaotic, it's confusing, because none of us actually want to look at these deeper parts of ourselves, these fractured parts of ourselves, the wound. We like to hide away from the wound. And Satan, or the adversary, the fighting force, the chaos of life, situates around us so that we are forced to face that. And when we overcome, there is a new sense of order. So chaos and order are a beautiful symphony, right? If there's just order, it just ends up being strict control. You never face anything. You actually have to dip into chaos, into the uncontrollable, in order for something unknown to spiral up to the surface. We grapple with it, and when we overcome it, we feel the emotions, we go through the shadow of it, we come into a new sense of order, a new sense of equilibrium. See, but if we only had order, we would stay here. I would stay here. As this Genevieve you're looking at right now, you would stay there. And there would be no evolution. So there's this beautiful saying, I'm not sure which Indian rishi said it, but there is no lotus flower without the mud of the earth. Chaos and order, light and dark, good and evil. They are not opposing each other, fighting each other. This concept of God and Satan at war for human souls was a later development. Before, it was totally understood that the wild, the chaos, was a part of God's story in us. That you see Kali. My mom would always say to me, she's very Christian, but she would say, these Hindus, they worship so many gods. And now that I've been living in India and I have a deep connection to Kali, it's not that the Indian person or the Hindu is worshipping Kali. There is also this understanding of Brahma, God, the ineffable. The Egyptians called that ineffable God Atum, right? The origin, the creator. And these other aspects or archetypes of that unknown, untouchable thing started to come into being as these mystics started to understand the nature of life and reality and the design, the creator's design. They start to communicate this through archetypes and stories and mythologies. And Kalima is an archetype. Set is an archetype, right? And when I go and I spend time at a Kali temple and you look at Kali, any Abrahamic today would go, oh my God, that's a demon. And I would say, yes, that is a demon, a daemon. The pagans never saw demons as evil horror movie characters. They saw them as inspired. And it was an inspiration that happened from within. They didn't see them as outside. And you look at Kali's face, she's fierce eyes, she's gouging out the entrails of a woman, she's holding a head, she cuts out the egoic problem. When I go and spend time there, it's because I'm a loss for what we don't know. When something's coming to the surface, it's chaos, it's in darkness, there's an ignorance. I don't know exactly when I'm about to transform something what that thing is. But I surrender to the dark power, the Lord of darkness, the Lord of chaos. That aspect of God. It's all God, right? These archetypes all fall under God. But I allow that aspect of God its space, because without it, without the Satan, the adversary, coming through me, I can't transform. Now, many people, I've been posting about this on my Instagram, just some information about Satan. And before I tell you this particular personal story of mine, the reason that this very healthy acceptance of the wild and the dark got transformed into this polarized good and evil understanding is because of the Roman Empire and the Roman Church's conquest. The problem of Satan is a problem of colonization. Right? Now, Constantine was the first emperor to release an edict saying that Christianity would be the official religion of Rome. That's one thing, that's okay. But slowly, over time, the emperors that followed, and within his own time as well, they started to exclude pagans, Manichaeans, Gnostics, the mystics who saw life in this much more nuanced, sophisticated manner. Rome then went on a campaign to annihilate any perspective that was not this dualistic understanding of this outside devil who's at war with a faraway God. Right? And you might say, well, why? What's the point? Why would Rome do that? Because if the empire could get everybody to be of one religion, if you can convince people's spirituality, if you can control that, you can have a pretty successful empire. Because they couldn't control the Gnostics, the pagans, the Manichaeans, the mystics, all the various schools. There were so many understandings before the Roman Catholic Church, and they couldn't control them. They would not submit. Because when you have a nuanced understanding and you accept your dark and you see evil and darkness as part of yourself and God as part of yourself, and you in full acceptance of the flesh and the wild, you're sovereign. You don't do what some king or emperor tells you to do. You just don't. So if they could convince people that there was a devil, right? And this happened over many centuries by violently annihilating any belief system that did not agree. They completely flattened temples. Rabbinical Judaism also came out of this conquest, right? Before, the high priests and priestesses that descended from the high priest Aaron had El Shaddai and Asherah, mother, father, light and dark, both at the altar of every temple. There was a full acceptance of nature. And this more holistic understanding of our own experience on earth and God and darkness within us as one thing. Right? King Josiah, a Jewish king, cut down all the Asherah poles and murdered all those priests and priestesses until only rabbinical Judaism remained, right? Which is where the wild, the earth, the mother, the Satan, the snake, has been removed from the story. So it's not just a Christian problem, it's also a Jewish problem. And, centuries later, then they also started to get very fine-tuned with annihilating anyone who didn't agree, right? Down to the Cathars, who identified as Christian, the Bogomils, who also identified as Christian, to actual Christian priests and priestesses, mystics, nuns and priests, right? These men and women identified as Christian, and if there was a theological difference, oh, you believe we don't have a sinful nature? You die. They got down to tiny theological differences, and you were murdered based on that. That's how far they went to maintain and colonize minds, spiritual thought, which is much more powerful than colonizing land, which they did anyways as well. Because if you then believe that there is a devil outside of you who's at war for your soul, then what? You are afraid of your own darkness. You're afraid of your own... you become afraid of your own darkness. You become afraid of your own desires, your impulses, anything that emerges out of the body. The chaos, you become afraid of transformation, actually. And you see anything that's, any dark part of yourself you see as evil. And then there's evil all around you, right? If they've convinced you that all these natural, wild aspects of the self in reality are evil, it's the devil. Oh my God, what are you going to do? Oh, well, we have the answer for you as well. The answer is this guy called Jesus. So convincing you of the devil helps us to convince you that you have a savior. And the only way to get saved is by coming to our church, obeying our religion, and following this savior story, which is problematic in its own way, and I will do another teaching on that. But for the psyche, to believe in a savior means you are giving up your own agency. So some people have said to me, yeah, but I've actually had experiences. I've seen dark entities. They are real. And this is what I want to communicate about that. In my early 20s, 23-ish, I think I had left the church, but I still had no awareness. I was still riddled with toxic shame and guilt. I was self-sabotaging, getting really drunk, really trying to hurt myself, not in healthy relationships. I was in so much pain, and I had no language or person around me to help me process that. I didn't know what was going on. I was just absolutely spiraling into chaos, right? So many years of repressed darkness. My upbringing in Christianity, yeah, there were lovely parts to it, good community and things like this. But try going through puberty as a Christian. All your natural instincts, your desires, your body becomes like a sin, becomes sinful. You look at it like it's against you, right? You start to actually get a fractured psyche because you are denying any darkness or dark thoughts or chaotic thoughts or whatever. You're not actually leaning into that and engaging with it and thinking, let me process, let me work through this. You're denying it because you believe it's the devil. And the devil is evil and God hates the devil. So if I want God to love me, I best not engage in a healthy process of integrating darkness. Right? So there's a lot of repressed shadow in Abrahamic religions is a lot of repression of the chaos, the dark, the Satan, which needs to come up. And by this age, I was, like I said, in a very broken place, and I had started to sleep in the afternoons. I couldn't sleep at night because I felt dark, evil presences around me. I felt it. I could feel entities around me. And I only felt safe to sleep in the afternoon. And I remember for a couple of weeks I was doing this. It felt like my reality was completely dissolving. It was really a confusing time for me, you know, God of confusion. And I remember my brother coming into my room every so often, and he told me about grace. And that was beautiful, and that really helped because I felt so alone at this time. And I remember one day I was sleeping, napping again in the afternoon, and I felt this visceral tapping on my forehead. Visceral, like you could tap your own skin. Tap, 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 I felt it. And I said, yeah. In my mind, I thought it was maybe my little sister. And I opened my eyes, and I was in my room, on my bed, and I immediately felt this dark entity over here. And I turned around, and this thing jumped on me, came onto me, and it was so suffocating. It was so heavy. It was like I couldn't even get words out, and my arms were grappling, and I was just like, and I eventually could pray, and it dissipated. And straight after that moment, actually, as it came off me, I lay back in my bed. I was like, and that was the first time I had a samadhi, or like a experience of beatific love. Because straight after that moment, I fell back on my bed, and then I saw this white organic light all around my room, and it was pouring into me, like my whole body was shaking, like I was just feeling this like love moving through my system, and I was crying, but in absolute awe of it. You know, we've all had those moments where we felt like we're in the kiss of God. Like I was just in it for maybe an hour, just in it, right? In bliss. And I felt so filled up, and I came out my room, and later I saw my father, who's a Christian elder and preacher, and I told him. And I was okay with everything that happened, actually. But then he said to me, there was a demon. It's like, what? Yeah. That was a demon, Jen. You lucky, my girl. You lucky. That demon came for you, eh? That demon. We better pray. We better pray. You better pray away that demon. You better cast out that demon. And that's when I actually started to get nervous in my body. I was like, oh my God, it was a demon? What do you mean? I didn't, what, you know? I was still very susceptible. I'd left the church, but I was still wanting my father's approval and my family's approval, and very susceptible to other people's interpretation of my personal experience. But that aside, for the 8 months or so that followed that, around every 2 weeks or so, a dark entity would come to me. And so many experiences. I remember waking up and something had pulled me out of my body, and my head was on the roof, and I was looking down at my body, and this thing was squeezing me. Many variations of this dark force coming into my space. Now, for the first month or so, I would be afraid. I'd be like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like this fear would surge. But because it was happening so often, it was training me. So by a couple months in, I was at total peace. I would sense this darkness closing in. I would even hear the mother call my name. I would hear, Jen. And I'd open my eyes, and this darkness would approach and condense onto me, and I wouldn't even, no fear would come up. I'd learned to watch my system, because I realized that the more afraid I was, the more condensed it became. It became heavier the more afraid I was, right? So I just learned out of necessity, like, oh, okay, when this happens, make sure to surrender the whole body. I softened everything, and I allowed love, the feeling of love and warmth, to come up. And I was like, I love you. And it dissolved and dissipated. Okay? So over 8 months, I actually started to enjoy this process. I was like, you guys are training me. You are my martial arts instructors of my heart and my system. Because by the end of it, I would just I now look upon darkness and I'm like, I love you. Because I know if I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, it comes closer and closer and closer. Okay. Now that I've given you this anecdotal, personal anecdotes, right? What I want to, let me start a new video. So what I want to say about this personal anecdote, right, is that after years of more growth and gnosis and evolution and understanding, I came to understand that those entities were emerging from my own inner reality, my own mental state, right? We are very powerful beings. We are co-creators. And what the mind believes, it is created in one's emerging field. Right? That's why it's very important to control the mind if you want to, I don't know, have an empire. Because if you can convince people that there is a devil and demons trying to get at them, then there they will appear. Because that's how strong the mind is. You are creating your reality every time you walk out the door. That's been proven now. That's not even a question. So what you believe deep in your heart and your psyche is definitely going to play a part in what takes place in your reality. And like I said, when this thing happened to me and I experienced that dark entity, I was then filled with love afterward. I wasn't even afraid of it until my preacher father told me to be afraid of it based on his discourse. Then that became, oh my God, is it a devil? Before it was just an experience of darkness, pushing up into me, coming close and suffocating me because I had repressed so much of my own pain. I was in so much denial that my whole system and psyche created a scenario where it came at me, came at my face. It had to do that. It had to come at me in that manner because I wasn't looking at it in any other way. And I was absolutely crumbling as a human. I was so broken. Nobody was helping me. I had no psychological help. I had nothing. And it got to that point where my beautiful body and spirit and psyche contrived, that's how it emerged in my reality, as daemons, dark figures coming at me. And like I said, when I wasn't afraid of them, and I loved them, they integrated and softened. I came to love the daemon because it taught me how to surrender into love. It taught me that when I feel fear and I'm overwhelmed, the situation gets stronger, of course, because my emotion, my energy in motion, my feeling state is defining my reality. That's what it taught me. When you are freaking out in here and you're like, yeah, the devil gets stronger and stronger and bigger because I am literally creating it from my perception. I'm feeding you with all this fear, and it gets bigger and bigger and it encroaches. But when I surrender and say love, and I feel love, it just dissolves into me. It doesn't go run away into the woods, I'm a little devil. No, it dissolves into me, as me. I was afraid of my own darkness. I was afraid of parts of myself. I had hidden so many dark parts of myself that were part of my light. You do not have light without dark. You cannot evolve without chaos. There is no lotus without the mud. Satan and God are the same thing. They work together. Light and dark, yin and yang. None of us evolve without conflict or a circumstance. But it's up to you. If you've experienced entities, my challenge to you is, how was your state of being at that time? Can you love it in? Can you say, come my brother, my sister, come me. Come emergent aspect of me. Let me put my arms around you. Teach me, what is it that I am repressing? What am I denying? What pain have I hidden so far away in the cupboard that is now spilling out in this situation? There is nothing outside of yourself. There is only you and the reality emerging around you, based on your perception, your understanding. Do you have right understanding in your brain? Because your brain is very powerful. And the Roman Church colonized our minds. 2/3 of this world are Abrahamic. Judaic, Christian, or Islam. And there is a polarized understanding of reality. All of them believe God is far away and that Satan is outside of the self. That is psychologically a very destructive perspective to hold in the mind. All agency then is outside of the self. Any good I experience has to come from far away if God ever decides to turn a little eye toward this planet and me here down in the depths of it. And all darkness I experience is some devil trying to kill me, get me, take my soul. Do you see how problematic that understanding is? Where does it leave the human in that experience? There's no agency. You have no agency for your own good and no agency over your own darkness and chaos and evil. It's not evil in terms of a murderer is evil. Evil in terms of ignorance, your own ignorance. Evil is a part of life, and thank God for it. There's a lot of people in the New Age spiritual world who love to talk about, creating your own reality, you manifest reality, the quantum field, and yet at the same time they talk about, Satanism and Luciferianism and beware of the dark entity, the big devil thing. And I'm like, you are still programmed by Abrahamic religion. You might have put it into a different discourse, right? Oh, it's reptilians now. Great. Same problematic psychology. There is an evil emerging outside of you. That's not how it works. Other people have said to me, yeah, but what about Satanists? What about people, musicians, and say, I sold my soul to the devil. The elite, and we hear these stories of them, worshipping, having these satanic cults, Luciferian cults. And by the way, Lucifer and Satan are not the same archetype. They have been fused together. And that is another teaching for another time. But I would say that people who worship Satan are as deluded as people who believe in Satan and worship Jesus. You're as deluded because it doesn't exist without you believing it exists. So to the Christian person who's like, the devil, I'm so afraid. I must quickly run to the church and beg Jesus to save me from this darkness. That is as delusional as a person going into some creepy eyes wide shut situation, cutting the throat of some innocent being or animal and pledging themselves to Satan. They both see Satan as an outside thing, One is afraid of it, one wants to worship it, but both of them are deluded because it's not real. So it doesn't matter whether people are doing crazy ass ceremonies to Satan. It's not a real thing. They're delusional. So who then is the real devil? And who has profited out of making a large majority of humanity believe in an outside devil? Who has profited by doing that and doing it violently? That would be the Vatican. Do you know that the British monarch answers to the Vatican? The Vatican is the richest institution in the world. The Vatican has murdered the most people as an institution out of all institutions in the known world. Over 100 million. So when musicians in the sort of elitist circles in Hollywood, somebody asked me this question, what do they mean when they say they sold their souls to the devil? They didn't sell their souls to some outside devil, even if these strange elitist communities happen to worship or have satanic ceremonies. They're deluded, as we've just unpacked. But when a musician sells their souls to the devil, it's because they choose fame over authenticity, right? They are told how, kind of what kind of music gets through, lyrically what will work, how they have to present. Also, when we need you to, encourage people to take, say, an injection, when we want people to take an injection, we need celebrities to tell everyone to do that. So yeah, they use them in that scenario as well. They use people, only get famous because you are agreeing to work with the system of control. The same system that controls and perpetuates our false dualistic understanding of good and evil, right? Red and blue, right? They like to keep us in separation. It's the system, right? The devil comes to divide. Who's dividing us? Who divides? When you look around with your eyes and you use your logic, who divides? Oh, the system said people who had the injection and are good and people who didn't are bad. Oh, it's Republican versus Democrat. Oh, it's Muslims versus Christians, or Jews versus Muslims, right? Oh, they're always creating sides, and they perpetuate that story with their big media machine, and they use people in positions of fame to perpetuate ignorance. That's selling your soul to the devil. It's selling your soul to the people and the elitist, psychotic people that control the world through things like a false discourse on the devil. They make you think that there's an outside evil monster devil so that you don't actually see the real devil at play here, which is people and institutions that we have given our power to. And we allow them to tell us, how we should live, what we should be doing, who our famous musicians will be because they tell us these people are famous and all their talk shows. And that's the real devil. But if they've got us, believing in some dark figure over here in the corner, then we kind of just keep letting this slide. They've been controlling us for millennia. The Roman Empire has embedded itself and taken on other names. They're still at play today. And they use religion to keep you blind to them. They're the devil. If you want a devil, and I would have been murdered for giving this message in the 1300s. I'd be a dead woman right now. There'd be a Jesuit standing behind me and a knife at my throat. I'd be dead. And you have to ask yourself why. Why is the message I'm giving you, why has it been dangerous for so many centuries? Because it puts power in your hands. It gives you the agency. You are God and you are Satan. and they are both to be loved, and they're both to be revered, and both have their space, and both only exist because of each other. The kingdom of heaven and hell is within you. And when you actually know that, you fully see through the powers of control around you, and you don't give them your autonomy anymore. That's why I would be dead. That's why my message is dangerous. Anyway, so hail Satan. That's all I'm saying. In terms of the Satan that sophisticated mystics have always understood, right? Not the Satan of the Judeo-Christian Bible and the conquest of Rome, the made-up Satan. Okay. Perhaps I should leave it there. You know, even the imagery of Satan that a lot of us have in our minds, like how did we come to understand, or, you know, in a lot of books, and when you think, okay, what does the devil look like? You're like, okay, it's got cloven hooves, sort of goat horns, sort of half beast, half man with his pitchfork, you know. Even that image comes from Pan, the Greek god Pan, who was god of the wild and fertility and nature. Right, a pagan god who would sort of play the role of Seth. Like we discussed, the Kemetic people had Set, Kali for the Indians, and there would be Pan for the Greeks. And of course, those are the people that Rome really needed to subjugate. So they started to, and Pan is this, looks like that. It's a man with like sort of animal legs, cloven feet, goat horns, and he's playing his little flute, and he's the god of nature, the wooded glens, fertility, sex, the wild, all the mother Satan aspects, earth. So the Roman Empire started to, obviously over time, the Roman Church started to demonize demons and create this devil image, and they wanted to demonize the pagans because they were trying to subjugate them. So they used this imagery of Pan as, you know, what the devil looks like, because pagans are bad. So let's take Pan, one of their archetypal expressions of God, and let's demonize that. So that's actually how even our idea of what the devil looks like came into being, right? It was part of their campaign. And I think by 400 CE, there was an edict released by the Roman Empire to decimate every pagan temple. And they did. So, yeah. It's okay though, because, you know, we have come through a cycle of darkness, decay. The mother goes through these big cycles, like sine wave rhythms, right? And we've gone through a long period of decay, and we are now coming into an age of illumination, and things and knowledge and wisdom that's been buried for so many centuries is just organically going to surface in each of our lives. We'll have our own personal illuminations because she's alive in your spirit. God is in you and in me and reveals in each of us. So she's waking up. Illumination and wisdom. This wisdom is waking up in each of our hearts again. Which is the only reason I am able to share this message and was given this message and illumined to what's happened to humanity, in this kind of ignorance and mind-controlled darkness we've been through. Yeah. Anyway, I hope that helped. It's such a big topic to cover, and I just know for myself, I put my arms around myself when I feel darkness, and I listen, because it's confusion and it's chaos, and there's a message for me in it. It wants to transform us. So that's all it is. It's part of us that wants to come into the light, wants to be seen. There are these fractured parts of the self, the inner child, that's been hurt by our conditioning in this culture, in this world as it is today, which is quite problematic, in our various family systems. And darkness is the inner child, a wounded part of the self that's calling and crying out to be seen and acknowledged. And it can feel dark and gnarly and creepy because we've hidden it for so long out of necessity, right? We only have these fractured parts of the self because we do that to survive. Right, I'm a person who never announces my feelings. I always just do. I don't say what I feel because I learned growing up that will upset people, right? So that becomes a wound because I had a dysfunctional family system. So say that problem is getting so much in my life, it's getting in the way so much that I start to have really dark and chaotic experiences, and this inner child, this fractured part of myself that wants to say how it feels, that wants to acknowledge its feelings, that wants to acknowledge its needs, and go deeper into self-love and self-care, it starts to come up in weird ways. If I push that away and say, no, you dark thing, you devil, I can't look at you, then I stay in my own ignorance. I stay in my darkness of, say, this one potential issue of denying my feelings and always just giving in, right? And you do that for too long, you become physically ill. That's the other thing that happens when we deny the call of the dark, the inner child that wants to come in and transform and make us renew our minds. When you face it and you look at the thing and you go through the hard memories of, oh gosh, my mom or dad used to do that. Yeah, like I learned to swallow my feelings over and over again. And now look at what I do in my life as an adult. It's hard, it's horrible, it's tough to face that stuff, but it's brave. And the daemon comes with that elixir. You have to go through the dark and grapple with the emotions to come out with the elixir, the rejuvenation, and the new understanding of, I'm going to evolve. I've evolved. Something has changed in me because I went into those dark places and I allowed myself to feel and transmute. And I grappled with the thing I've been denying for so long. And it's an ongoing process, but you know what? That person that always we always do what they want, or it's not even their fault because I don't say. I'm going to say now in my life, I'm going to see what happens, because that would make me more autonomous. That would make me more evolved and whole. If I give that inner child, I let her come back into me and I allow her to speak. And I walk into life now and I say, actually, I kind of feel this way about the situation or about whatever. It's hard for people who have never, who were taught not to announce feelings. It's hard for people who were taught not to announce feelings. And I know that from my own recovery, right? So you go into life and you announce. And you see what happens. Okay, maybe there will be a conflicting scenario where that dark, chaotic feeling will come up. That person will sort of object to me having my own opinion. And they'll try and push it in their way. Why does this feel so uncomfortable? It feels uncomfortable because this person is crossing a boundary. And now that I've learned to announce my feelings, maybe this person shouldn't be in my life if this is what they keep doing when I announce my feelings. Another scenario, I learned to announce my feelings and this person says and acknowledges and says, thank you. I didn't realize you felt that way. Maybe then we could figure it out in this manner. And this person builds a bridge with me, and I feel so good and whole and seen. Thank you. This person is good for me. And now I learn to filter my life accordingly, because I've taken that inner child that had become a dark density because I pushed it away. Now that I've integrated her into myself, and she's teaching me and I'm giving her space, it's making my life better, because I'm learning, okay, wait, maybe these people are not good for me and these people are good. And the situation, and I feel so good in my life when I've announced my feelings and I'm understood, and then the reality moves in a different way, because I'm now learning to express in this new way. And then that brings a whole new dimension into my life that gives me fulfillment, changes my reality, right? So when we integrate darkness, we change reality, because it's teaching us something that we have been hiding from. So it's a beautiful part of the human experience. And you should push in and surrender to the daemon and say, what is it, little broken piece of myself that wants to come back in? How am I going to elevate and evolve? Okay, now I really am done. I think this is going to be quite a long teaching. But yeah, I'm sending you all so much love, and please share in the comments how you feel about Satan, darkness, your own chaos, your own evil or ignorance, what you've come to experience and learn through your own process. And sending you all my love. Bye.